Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 7 of season 2 of The Flash called Guerrilla Warfare. Yeah, we knew they'd have to get that pun out of there eventually. And all in all, I thought this was just kind of an okay episode. Now, it's cool that it was mostly a Caitlyn episode and that everybody else kind of had their nice moments, but it just didn't really feel as strong as some of the other stuff that we've seen lately. So let's just kind of get right into things and start talking. There's one little shout out that they had in this episode that I haven't really seen any of the other folks who've been talking about this episode bring up. Now, when we start the episode, we're seeing this place called Vaughn Labs. Now, I watched that and I immediately started thinking about Brian K. Vaughan, who's a notable comic book author. He was the writer who created Runaways. He did a really great Doctor Strange story called The Oath. Done a lot of really good stuff, and even was one of the writers on Lost for a while. Not that I ever actually watched Lost. I was watching other stuff at the time, but so I'm thinking like, well, I wonder if that's a nod to him. And then they go inside the lab, and the scientist who gets mind controlled by Grodd immediately talks to another person working there and refers to him as Brian. So we see the word Vaughn, and we hear the word immediately after that the name Brian. So yeah, there's no way that's not a nod to that particular comic book writer. So let's just kind of get right into things with the characters. Let's kind of start small and work our way up. So Patty continues to catch on that Barry and Joe are actively lying to her, and none too happy about that. So yeah, Barry, that's going to blow up in both in you and Joe's face pretty darn soon. Patty is obviously a sharp one. So speaking of Joe, just that bit where he gets to muse about what it would be like to have a son, and of course he says that to Iris, so it's just like, oh boy, that's not going to be pretty when that comes out. Let's see, what else, what else, what else. Oh yeah, Henry's back. Barry's dad. Now some people were kind of talking about, like, he mentioned he was fishing, and Zoom mentioned fishing the last time they were talking. I think that's probably just a coincidence. You know, I don't really Zoom doesn't really strike me as the sort of guy who has fishing as a hobby. So I think that might have just been a little something the writers might have done to try and throw people off the trail. I don't think that at the moment, I don't think that Henry is Earth 2's Earth 2 Henry is Zoom. That I don't think that's going to be turn out to be the case. But it is nice to see that when they used Henry's background being a doctor, he really quickly jives to the fact that Barry physically is fine. It's mentally that he sort of needs to kind of get it together. And that story where he tells about, watching all of his friends slowly just give up on him, lose faith in him, come to believe that he was a murderer, and how that really resonates with what's happened with Barry and his failures and losing the trust of so many people. Which you kind of have to wonder, well, did the people of Central City really lose faith in the Flash? I kind of tend to want to give them a little bit more credit than that. I mean, everybody loses once in a while. That's life. I mean, what's that line from Captain Picard? It is possible to make no errors and still lose. That isn't weakness, that's life. Captain Picard said something almost like that at some point. But anywho, but we get another amazing Grant Gustin, John Wesley Shipp scene where Henry kind of gets Barry back up and running, and it's just another wonderfully heartfelt scene. You gotta love that. Let's see what else. Of course, Legends of Tomorrow is getting ever closer, so that's kind of the main thing that's going on with Cisco this episode. Him vibing on Kendra Saunders and getting visions of Hawkman and such. And man, they're really pulling no punches on getting things set up for Legends of Tomorrow, which I'm all for. I think that show is going to be absolutely amazing. Oh, excuse me. But I do kind of wish that they'd kind of just let's get on with it, okay? I get it. You're setting things up, and that's important. But I really would like you to focus in very much on what's going on with the Flash, because Barry's got enough going on right now that I think that needs a little bit more of more attention, especially given the very minuscule amount of zoom that we've seen. Now, again, often less is more when it comes to a villain, but I think now we're kind of getting to the point where zoom really needs to be put in focus a little bit more for us to really start getting a read on what his deal is beyond what Harrison Wells has told us. Speaking of which, I mean, how awesome was that to see Tom Cavanaugh back in the Reverse Flash suit in that great scene where Cisco's like, no, say all this stuff, and like, yeah, you're like a son to me, but I'm gonna kill you anyway. And Harry gets it wrong the first time, and then the second time he's just like, man, that was great. And then there's the whole thing with him interacting with Grodd. And I love how it's that the way Grodd puts it is that his father never asked permission for anything. He just took it. So that kind of hints at that in season one it was sort of implied that there was genuine affection there, and that he really done right by Grodd. But here it's portrayed in a much more abusive light, which is totally in keeping with things. I mean, again, Eobard Thawne saw Cisco like a son, but was perfectly willing to murder him. But what the hell is the Reverse Flash going to take from a damn gorilla? I mean, Grodd doesn't like bananas. I was like, I mean, really, what exactly was he taking that he never asked permission for? That makes no sense at all. But anyway, as I said, this really does sort of feel mostly like a Caitlin episode. And yes, we do have some vague King Kong allusions here. And I'm really glad they kept that very light, very subtle. The real thing here, though, was Caitlin going out there and being able to convince Harry not to go back to Earth 2, to genuinely ally with Team Flash fully and properly. Not just a thing of convenience, but it's like full on, you're on the team sort of situation. Not our interests collide, so we're going to work together, but mostly sort of be doing our own thing. Here now he's a full-fledged genuine member of the team, and this is really a nice way of showing that even though she doesn't have powers, Caitlin is still an extraordinarily important part of everything that's going on with Team Flash. I mean, she was the one that really kind of got through to Jax Jackson, and thus basically made it possible for Martenstein to live and for there to be a firestorm. And here she plays a big part in taking Grodd down this time. I mean, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute. And Barry, even after that pep talk from his dad, was still none too thrilled about a rematch with Grodd because, well, this isn't just a comic book thing. You put a human up against a gorilla, the human is going to end up a pile of pulp on the floor. I mean, you throw the baddest dude in the UFC, the biggest dude at the NFL at a gorilla, those guys are going to come out of that fight in pieces. Gorillas are crazy, crazy strong. And, I know I've told this story before, but years ago I actually happened to see two elephants get into a fight at the San Antonio Zoo. And, man, that moment I think is always going to stick in my mind because that moment is one of those moments where you realize just how powerful nature can be. How, humans, we have all this amazing technology and stuff, but we can never forget that nature is monstrously badass, and if it wants to, can utterly stomp us into the dirt. And man, just watching these two enormous animals just nail each other. I mean, again, guys, that just resonated with me so much. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. So I just look at that and I try and imagine what it would be like if a person found themselves on the wrong end of an angry gorilla, and it's a frightening, frightening thought. And of course, it was kind of cool to see Barry get to use take Grodd out with that awesome punch, and then, oh god, we actually get to see at least a little bit of Gorilla City. I mean, they actually freaking found a way to incorporate Gorilla City live action, and they're setting this up to pay off later on. Now, I don't know if they're going to have Grodd again this season. I kind of hope Grodd becomes sort of a once a season thing, because he's just an enormous, enormous hit to the budget, and we already saw them seriously go nuts with King Shark. In fact, I think this episode, Grodd looked a little less cool than he did last time around, and I'm assuming that's because the money went into those 45 seconds of King Shark. But oh yeah, next season, Barry going to Gorilla City, a chance to introduce Solovar. Oh man, that could be so crazy good. That would be like the most comic booky thing ever that they've done on any of these shows, even given as nuts as they're obviously going to go with Legends of Tomorrow. I mean, Gorilla City is one of those just ideas that is so out there, it is almost unfathomable to imagine that we have a really genuine shot of seeing that in live action. But, well, I can't imagine that they weren't talking about that whole thing about, Reverse Flash promising Grodd the city will be yours. And why the hell would the Reverse Flash promise this to Grodd anyway? What the hell? That doesn't make any sense either. Okay, I'm just going to have to let that one go, or it's going to annoy the hell out of me. So, with that said, guys, I'm going to call it here. Again, not the strongest episode of The Flash this season, but there were definitely a lot of fun things, some nice character moments, so I really can't complain too awful much. Until next time, guys, take care and have a good one.